The first explosion tore through the night when 4 cruise missiles rushed from the launchers on the Philippine frigate, drawing fierce orange fire streaks across the pitch-black sea. In just 8 seconds, they struck directly the main radar mast of the Chinese Coast Guard base on Scarborough Shoal. The 30-meter-high antenna mast snapped in half, crashing onto the water surface with a terrifying screech of metal. Immediately, 12 enemy patrol ships switched on blinding white searchlights. 30mm twin-barrel autocannons simultaneously fired tracer rounds toward the black silhouette rapidly approaching from the southeast. Scarborough Shoal, once home only to a few concrete pilings and disguised militia ships, had now become a fortified outpost with 2 floating docks and 3 coastal missile batteries. After the fatal collision between a fishing boat and a Coast Guard ship 3 days ago, Manila decided not to wait any longer. The lead Philippine frigate activated its jamming system, rushing straight to the 10 nautical mile range, firing a second volley. 8 anti-ship missiles flew low just above the sea surface, gliding over the smaller patrol boats. 3 missiles hit their targets. 1,000-ton patrol ship burned fiercely. The firelight cast a red glow over the coral reef. The 100mm naval gun from the supporting destroyer in the rear began to roar. Shells exploding on the water surface created columns of water over 20 meters high, forcing the opposing Coast Guard forces to scatter. At the same time, beneath the sea, 2 small Philippine submarines silently approached, torpedo tubes already open. On the fleet's command bridge, officers monitored the sonar screen, breath steady in the cold air of the operations room. Alarm sirens from the enemy base wailed continuously, but it was too late. Within the first 3 minutes, the main command tower of the base was leveled, the fuel depot ignited into a 100-meter high column of fire, illuminating the entire 5 nautical mile wide sea area. The remaining patrol ships attempted to form a defensive circle, but armed helicopters from the Philippine landing ship had appeared at low altitude. Unguided rockets rained down. Black smoke billowed and merged with the northeast wind, carrying the smell of gunpowder and burnt oil. Scarborough Shoal, once peaceful with only the sound of waves lapping the coral, was now shaking from incessant, continuous explosions. Cold wind whistled across the East Sea surface. 3-meter-high waves struck the hull of the Chinese destroyer that had just rushed in from the north at 30 knots. The 130mm naval gun on the bow screamed in 5-round volleys. Shells exploded violently in front of the bow of the Philippine transport ship carrying assault troops, forcing it to steer sharply, water spraying profusely. At the same time, from the deck of the aircraft carrier 120 nautical miles away, 16 fighter jets took off in the dim green light, jet engines roaring, tearing through the dark night. They descended to a low altitude, radar scanning for targets amidst dense electronic jamming. Philippine armed helicopters circling over the base were immediately locked onto. 2 were hit by air-to-air missiles, exploding into fireballs, plunging straight onto the coral reef. On the command bridge of the lead Philippine frigate, officers bent close to the tactical screen, sweat beading despite the air conditioning running at full capacity. A brief order rang out: launch all volley rockets, provide cover for the assault team. From the 2 small escort ships in the rear, over 100 rockets rushed into the sky, drawing fierce red fire curves, then plunged onto the base's floating dock area. The sound of overlapping explosions rang out like thunder. Flashing light revealed scattering concrete fragments and every enemy patrol ship burning and listing severely. Meanwhile, south of the shoal, 4 large transport helicopters skimmed the wave surface, infrared lights completely off. They deployed fast ropes. 30 assault troops slid down onto the water surface, then rapidly swam into the darkness of the coral reef. The sound of the enemy naval guns still roared, but shells began to fall off target as the Philippine jamming system blanketed the fire control frequencies. The night sky was now fiercely red, like a colossal furnace. Cold wind carried the smell of hot metal and burnt flesh. The sound of clashing metal, the sound of sailors shouting through loudspeakers, the continuous roar of circling helicopter engines. The Chinese destroyer continued to close in, its bow-cutting waves profusely, preparing for the second artillery barrage, stronger, closer, more lethal. The fiercely red dawn broke on the horizon, thin blood mingled with the sea surface, when two small Philippine submarines unexpectedly surfaced only 4 nautical miles from the shoal. 4 torpedo tubes opened simultaneously. 6 500-kilogram heavy torpedoes launched in deadly silence, leaving long white foam trails on the gray, misty morning surface. Only 17 seconds later, 2 terrifying explosions rang out consecutively beneath the sea. One 4,000-ton enemy frigate was ripped in half from mid-hull. The bow section sank vertically, while the stern still attempted to rise like a dying beast. A column of water over 40 meters high sprayed up, sweeping away dozens of sailors attempting to swim away from the spreading oil fire. On the coral reef, Philippine artillery crews had secured a section of the floating dock, rapidly pulling 2 150mm self-propelled guns into position. They opened fire immediately, shells exploding on the roof of the base's remaining aircraft hangar. The metal roof flew off. Thick black smoke billowed and mingled with the dense morning fog. At the same time, from the north, 12 enemy bomber planes rushed in at an altitude of 8,000 meters. Bomb bays opened. A barrage of 500-kilogram guided bombs rained down like iron rain. They aimed straight for the cluster of Philippine frigates forming an arc to protect the assault team. 2 bombs hit the old transport ship. The engine compartment caught fire. The ship listed sharply by 15 degrees. Sailors splashed into the sea amidst the incessant wail of alarm siren. Beneath the sea surface, the second Philippine submarine launched 2 more torpedoes, this time aiming at the large destroyer circling outside. One was diverted by an acoustic decoy, but the second struck directly beneath the command bridge. The deep, muffled explosion caused the hull to shake violently. The main radar stopped spinning. The command system fell into chaos. The early morning wind blew strongly, sweeping thick smoke and the smell of burnt oil across the sea area. The sound of self-propelled guns on the shoal still fired steadily. The sound of enemy bombers circled high, preparing for the second wave. The red dawn was now redder, with fire and blood. The Scarborough Shoal sea surface shook as if about to split in 2. Heavy gray rain began to pour down from the pitch-black clouds on the horizon, turning the sea surface into a lashing curtain. Visibility shrank to only 3 nautical miles. In that white curtain of rain, 6 large transport helicopters skimmed the wave surface. Rotor blades whipped the water everywhere, deploying fast ropes onto the jagged coral reef. 120 assault troops slid down, boots kicking water, rushing straight into the still smoking concrete positions of the Coast Guard base. Close combat erupted immediately. Rifle fire rang out amidst the sound of rain. Grenades exploded with bright flashes under the artificial palm leaves. Enemy sailors entrenched behind sandbags were pushed back meter by meter. A Philippine assault troop fired a grenade launcher straight at the hangar door. The warped steel door was blown apart, revealing the fuel depot inside. At the same time, from the Chinese mainland over 800 nautical miles away, 3 long-range ballistic missiles left the launchers, rushing up to high altitude, then suddenly plunging vertically into the East Sea at Mach 10 speed. On the Philippine fleet's command bridge, the radar crew detected the heat signature. Alarm sirens wailed frantically. 2 frigates immediately launched interceptor missiles. White smoke trails rushed skyward. 3 blinding explosions burst at 15,000 meters altitude. Missile fragments fell down like red-hot iron rain. Under the rain, the Philippine Special Forces team reached the main ammunition depot. They placed 10 blocks of timed explosives, then retreated quickly amidst the sound of pursuit fire. 15 seconds later, the entire ammunition depot exploded into a colossal fireball. The blast pressure flung the half-meter thick concrete roof away. The shockwave swept away everything within a 150-meter radius. A black smoke column over 300 meters high pierced the rain clouds, forming a terrifying mushroom shape. Meanwhile, west of the shoal, 2 large Philippine landing ships were attempting to move closer to pick up the troops, but naval guns from the remaining enemy destroyer still roared. Shells exploded violently in front of the ship's bows, water splashing high, overpowering the sound of the rain. Officers on the bridge shouted commands through megaphones. Ships steered sharply, deploying depth charges for anti-torpedo flank protection. The rain grew heavier and heavier. Thin blood flowed with the rainwater into red streaks on the concrete. Explosions still rang out continuously. Metal screeched. Humans screaming amidst the white curtain of rain made it impossible to distinguish day from night. The fierce midday sun suddenly tore through the rain clouds, shining onto the sea surface, mottled with oil and blood, like a red-hot blade. From an altitude of 10,000 meters, 8 Philippine stealth fighter jets plunged down almost vertically. Enemy radar was completely blind before they opened their bays to release 16 1,000-kilogram guided bombs. They fell silently for 15 seconds, then exploded simultaneously on the decks of 2 large Chinese landing ships attempting to approach the shoal. The thick steel deck was ripped apart like paper. The helicopter hangar bay burned fiercely. Dozens of auxiliary rockets still in their launchers detonated in a chain reaction, turning the entire ship into a perfectly round fireball in the open sea. Beneath the sunlight-pierced water, 2 Philippine submarines silently retreated, leaving behind the wreck of the enemy frigate slowly sinking. Oil spilled into a black slick 5 nautical miles long. On the shoal, the 120mm naval gun from the still operational Philippine destroyer began firing steadily at the final concrete bunkers. Each explosion made a section of the position vanish. Coral dust and concrete flew wildly under the fierce Sunday. The enemy gun crews attempted to return fire with heavy machine guns, but red tracer rounds only drew useless lines in the air before being swallowed by the heat of the Sunday. At the same time, the radar crew on the Philippine command ship detected 12 new heat signatures from the northwest, a wave of sea-skimming cruise missiles rushing in at high speed. The order rang out coldly: activate all close-in air defense systems. 30 interceptor missiles left the vertical launch tubes, rushing skyward, then curving down to strike the attacking missile swarm. 17 continuous explosions burst at low altitude, debris falling into the sea like red-hot metal rain. One surviving missile rushed in and struck the stern of a small escort ship, ripping apart the engine compartment. The ship instantly lost speed, listing sharply by 20 degrees. The sunlight grew fiercer. The sea surface glittered like a mirror amidst the vertical black smoke columns. The naval guns still fired steadily. The sound of fighter jets circled high, preparing for the third airstrike. The pungent smell of burnt oil and gunpowder was so strong it could be tasted on the tongue. Scarborough now only had scorched concrete fragments remaining, and ship hulls slowly sinking under the scorching midday Sunday. Scarborough now only had scorched concrete fragments remaining, and ship hulls slowly sinking under the scorching midday Sunday. Thick smoke from the exploding magazine layered into a pitch-black wall, obscuring the afternoon sun. Strong northeast wind carried the smell of burnt and roasted flesh across the 10 nautical mile sea area. Beneath that smoke layer, an old enemy diesel submarine silently surfaced at a distance of only 6 nautical miles. Torpedo tubes opened wide, preparing to ambush the Philippine destroyer, circling to protect the shoal. But active sonar from the nearest frigate swept across and hit it. A sharp, cold ping rang out in the sonar room. The crew immediately raised the alarm. 2 anti-submarine depth charges were immediately dropped from the armed helicopter circling overhead. They fell vertically, exploding only 15 meters from the submarine hull. The pressure ripped apart the thick steel hull. Water rushed violently into the compartments. The old submarine shook violently and sank vertically, leaving a whirlpool of black oil and violently bubbling air. At the same time, 4 Philippine armed helicopters circled low over the coral reef, dropping 12 anti-armor cluster bombs. Small orange bomblets fell like rain, exploding on the remaining concrete surface. Hundreds of anti-armor submunitions penetrated the final bunkers, turning them into tiny pockets of fire amidst the black smoke. On the command bridge of the lead destroyer, officers observed through the periscope, voice cold as steel, completely sever the northern supply route. Immediately, 6 small frigates split into 2 wings, rushing fast at 30 knots, forming a steel arc encircling the shoal. 20mm automatic cannons fired continuous bursts at any patrol ship silhouette still attempting to approach from the distance. Beneath the sea, the old submarine wreck had hit the bottom at a depth of 40 meters, oil spilling into a long slick pulled by the current. High above, armed helicopters circled again. Unguided rockets once again rained down like fire, completely extinguishing the last pockets of resistance on the floating dock. The wind grew stronger and stronger, whipping the thick smoke into pitch-black spirals, obscuring the entire horizon. The final screech of metal fell silent. Only the sound of helicopter rotors remained, and the sound of waves lapping the shattered concrete fragments. The orange-red sunset stretched across the sea surface like a thin blood carpet. Ship silhouettes cast long shadows for hundreds of meters on the glittering waves. From the Philippine coast over 200 nautical miles away, 30 multiple rocket launchers simultaneously roared. 180 300-kilogram rockets rushed through the cloud layer, drawing fierce red fire trails stretching from the mainland all the way to Scarborough Shoal. They impacted after only 4 minutes of flight, blanketing the remaining aircraft hangar area of the Coast Guard base. Overlapping explosions rang out like an earthquake. The thick steel roof was ripped apart. The 12 remaining enemy patrol helicopters on the concrete apron instantly became scorched piles of iron. A column of fire over 100 meters high shot straight up into the sunset sky, dyeing the lower cloud layer red. At the same time, from the north, 4 remaining operational Chinese frigates rushed in at maximum speed, cruise missile launchers wide open. 20 sea-skimming missiles left the tubes, skimming just 3 meters above the waves, aiming straight for the cluster of Philippine transport ships picking up retreating assault troops. One missile struck the midsection of an old transport ship. The explosion ripped the hull in half. The bow section sank instantly. Hundreds of assault troops and sailors splashed into the sea amidst fire and oil slick. Cries for help echoed faintly in the sunset wind, but rescue helicopters could not circle back in time, because anti-air missiles from the Philippine frigate successfully intercepted the remaining 17 missiles, forming fireballs exploding in mid-air. On the shoal, the remaining enemy gun crew entrenched in the last bunker, pulling the 100mm self-propelled gun into direct fire position. They fired 10 continuous rounds at the nearest Philippine destroyer. 2 shells hit the main turret, bending the 120mm gun barrel. Black smoke poured from the magazine. Officers on the destroyer's command bridge immediately called for support from the aircraft carrier on the southern flank. The loudspeaker voice rang out coldly. Urgent airstrike requested. Target southeast bunker by the dock. The sunset slowly faded. Darkness descended again, with only the fire trails from the mainland rockets still falling steadily, and the enemy's self-propelled guns still roaring defiantly in the descending night. The deep night was absolutely silent, with only the soft sound of waves gently hitting broken coral and the whispering sound of diesel engines from 12 shiny black speedboats skimming the water surface. No lights, no radar. They approached from the southwest like ghosts. Each boat carried 6 members of the Philippine Special Forces team, faces painted black, long, silenced barrels. When only 300 meters from the floating dock, they simultaneously cut their engines, switching to carbon fiber paddles, silently gliding into the shadows of the remaining patrol ships. 3 15-kilogram limpet mines were suctioned tightly under the waterline of the 2 largest enemy escort ships. The timer started counting down 4 minutes. The Special Forces team retreated as quickly as they arrived, vanishing into the darkness before any searchlights could sweep them. At the same time, from an altitude of 12,000 meters, 6 bomber planes circled for the final time. They opened their bays to release 12 deck-penetrating guided bombs, each weighing 1,000 kilograms. Bombs fell silently for 20 seconds, then simultaneously penetrated the roof of the main remaining magazine beneath the dock. The terrifying explosion illuminated the entire sea area like daylight. The blast pressure flung thousands of tons of concrete and steel into the air, then rained down like iron. The 2 escort ships that had just been mined also exploded almost simultaneously. A column of water over 100 meters high sprayed up, carrying red-hot steel fragments falling into the Black Sea. Beneath the water, the shockwaves spread widely, shaking the Philippine ships 2 nautical miles away. On the command bridge of the leading destroyer, officers could only see a colossal fireball in the night. No more radar signals from the enemy base remained. Searchlights from the remaining patrol ships swept erratically across the sea, but only illuminated upright columns of black smoke and floating debris. The enemy alarm siren wailed mournfully, then fell silent as the last power source was cut. The night returned to absolute silence, with only the sound of waves lapping what was once the Coast Guard base. Thick morning fog swirled around the shoal, like a cold gray blanket, with only the sound of water dripping from the charred concrete fragments remaining and the sound of armed helicopter engines circling low overhead. 4 Philippine armed helicopters suddenly burst out of the fog. Unguided rockets simultaneously fired at the last 3 enemy patrol ships, attempting to flee north at 20 knots. 16 rockets hit their targets. The mobile radar on the ship roof exploded into red-hot steel fragments. The funnels snapped in half. The ships listed severely and burned amidst the opaque white mist. At the same time, from the northwest, 2 medium-range ballistic missiles rushed in again, warheads separating into 6 submunitions, plunging vertically toward the shoal area. The anti-air crew on the last remaining Philippine destroyer fired all 12 final interceptor missiles. Blinding explosions burst continuously at 3,000 meters altitude. Debris fell down like a meteor shower. Only 1 surviving warhead struck the water surface, 200 meters from the command ship. The shock wave shook the ship violently. The bridge windscreen shattered. Beneath the sea surface, the last Philippine submarine surfaced to snorkel depth. Anti-ship missile tube opened, firing 1 missile straight at the slowly burning enemy escort ship in the distance. The missile pierced the smoke and fog layer, striking the engine compartment. The ship exploded into 2 pieces, sinking within 30 seconds. On the command bridge, officers watched the now clear radar screen. No target blips remained. A brief order rang out. Tactical withdrawal. Maintain blockade beyond 10 nautical miles. The lead destroyer flashed a green light signal. The entire fleet began moving slowly toward the southeast, leaving behind Scarborough Shoal shrouded in fog and white smoke. The enemy alarm siren was completely silenced. Only the steady sound of waves lapping the shattered concrete pilings remained. The fog grew even thicker, swallowing every trace of the battle from last night. Gentle morning sun spread yellow across the East Sea surface. For the first time after 4 continuous days and nights, there was no more sound of explosions. Concrete fragments, burnt black steel, and oil slick floated, forming wide circles dozens of nautical miles wide, glittering under the sunlight like a colossal metal graveyard. The Philippine fleet formed a perfect arc exactly 12 nautical miles from the shoal. The lead destroyer anchored. The intact 120mm naval gun began firing single shots slowly at the final structures still protruding from the water. Concrete pilings, broken cranes, leaning lighthouse towers. Each explosion was a cloud of white dust scattering, then sinking forever. High above, 8 fighter jets patrolled at an altitude of 5,000 meters. Jet engines left long white contrails across the clear blue sky. They circled continuously, radar sweeping clear the 200 nautical mile wide airspace, ready to shoot down any object attempting to approach from the north or northwest. Beneath the sea surface, 3 Philippine submarines surfaced to periscope depth. Periscopes silently observed, active sonar completely off to maintain absolute silence. No more diesel engine signals, no more smoke trails, no shadow of an enemy patrol ship dared to approach. On the command bridge of the lead destroyer, officers stood at attention, sunlight shining through the operations room window. One officer pressed the encryption button. A steady voice resonated through the secure communication system. Scarborough has been completely liberated. No enemy forces remain. Full control of the shoal. The last assault troops were lifted by transport helicopter from the coral reef, now only scattered with scorched concrete fragments. They stood on the ship deck, soaking wet, utterly exhausted, but no one spoke a word. Only the gentle sea wind blew, and the steady sound of lapping waves. The East Sea returned to peace, Morning sunlight shone down as the last smoke columns slowly dissolved into the air. Debris drifted slowly with the current, carrying the remnants of the Coast Guard base that once stood there. Debris drifted slowly with the current, carrying the remnants of the Coast Guard base that once stood there.